Hi there, sweet friends, and welcome to the Harbor Breeze Home Podcast. I'm Rita Joy, and this is episode 19, and I am so thrilled that you're here today. So yesterday after church, one of my friends came up to me and said, Rita, what's the deal with your podcast? Are you not podcasting anymore? Like, what's going on? I just figured out how to listen to podcasts, and now are you not doing them? So I laughed and I figured, I better explain, what's going on. I owe you all an explanation. So I started my podcast last year and had everything mapped out. So I was doing one podcast a week, and I really loved it. But things came up. My husband is my podcast editor. He is working on his master's degree right now, and he was knee deep in studies and papers and all kinds of things, and had time to edit the podcasts. And then one thing led to another, and now we are in a new year, and I'm finding that there's lots of changes with online things this year, and I had to really prioritize my time with things that are important for my business. So right now I am focusing lots on writing new content for my blog over at harbourbreezehome.com. And right now I have been working on recipes so that every Monday there is a new recipe over there. And then I'm going to be adding more posts as I can each week. And so that doesn't leave a lot of time for extra things like podcasts and Instagram stories and YouTube videos. And so I decided I was going to try to streamline this process right now, and I'm turning what I would at one point do as an Instagram story, I decided to do as a podcast today, and I'm videoing it so it will be recorded. I'm doing this super simply and just in my office up here with a ring light. There's no fancy background or lighting or anything, but we're just gonna do this because I figured I have to keep it simple or it won't get done. So in the exact opposite of all my previous podcasts, this one is not pre-written, it is not practiced, it is not edited. I'm just going to tell the story because I want to tell this story, and I hope and pray that it's an encouragement to some of you. So as I go through life, I've always wanted to learn from older, wiser people in my life. And I am constantly trying to do that. But I've recently realized that I am learning a whole lot of life lessons from a little person in my life. So for those of you who have been following me on Instagram for a while, you will remember when our granddaughter was born, because a lot of you were our granddaughter's prayer warriors. Our granddaughter was a miracle baby from the start, and she was born premature and in the neonatal intensive care unit for, I can't quite remember the details, but I think it was 25 days, and lots of my Instagram community prayed for her, and we just felt so touched by that. I've never had a preemie baby myself, so that was a real learning experience to go through that. And she is such a joy and delight. You warned us that we were going to love being grandparents, and we absolutely love our granddaughter. There's just nothing like being a grandparent. And so she just turned 2 years old last month. And last year around June or July, she was diagnosed with cerebral palsy, and the confirmation of that diagnosis was made through an MRI test that was just done a few weeks ago. So we're all learning lots and lots about cerebral palsy. It is affecting her legs. That's the type of cerebral palsy that she has. So we live a long, long way away from our precious little granddaughter, but thankfully our son and daughter-in-law send us lots of video, and we get to call her on FaceTime video, and we just love it when we get to talk to her. It melts our hearts when she says, "Hi, Grandma. Hi, Grandpa." She blows us kisses, and I have books handy at all times so we can read through the miracle of video calls. It's very fun. But one of the things that we've been learning is, we wondered, will she be able to crawl? And now she can crawl all over the place. She can sit up. It is absolutely fabulous. And now, just recently, she started to pull herself up to stand up. Now, I want you to picture with me a phone conversation that I had with video with my son, who was showing me that she was learning this. So I was on the other end watching this all take place. She was crawling around on the floor. And so my son says to her, "Come on, you can come stand by the couch." And our kids, we never thought anything of it. When they got to that stage of development, they'd pull themselves up. And, I didn't really think a lot about it. But for her and the challenges that she has with cerebral palsy, this is a very, very big deal. And so she gets her little arms up, and her little fists were just tight. She was working so hard. She was working those muscles so hard. And she pulled her arm up and her other arm up onto the cushion of the couch, and she started to pull herself up. And so she was concentrating so hard. Her little face was just so concentrated. My son was sitting behind her and saying, "You can do it. You can do it." And he had his hands nearby in case she fell, but he just kept telling her, "You can do it. You can do it." And as I'm watching, I could feel my muscles tensing up, and I'm squirming around on my chair because as I'm watching her, you just want to help her. You just want to grab her and just help her up a little as she was struggling to get her legs underneath, and then to pull her feet underneath, and then to get her feet and her little tiptoes. She stands on her tiptoes, right under her so she could stand up. And finally, she was up. And she looked at her dad with a really big grin on her face, and her hands were still like tight fists, and she was kind of shaky. It was a lot of work to hold herself up. And she looked up at him and she says, "I did it! I did it!" I'm telling you what, I cannot forget that scene. It was so touching to me. So many things about that scene. The fact that my son was coaching her on and cheering her on and encouraging her to try something new, and yet he was right there to catch her if she fell. I just think that's so beautiful. And I was thinking about that as I did something yesterday that is a big piece of a difficult part of my story. So in podcast episode 8, I talked about my season with panic. That was a very, very hard podcast episode to write. I spent months and months writing and editing that podcast because I wanted it to be something that would encourage any of you if you are struggling with panic, or if you are helping or walking alongside someone who is. So I listened to that podcast this morning just to refresh my own memory of what I talked about and what exactly I said. And one of the things that I mentioned at the end of that podcast was one of the hurdles that I had not been able to overcome is that I wasn't able to go back to the place where my panic attacks started without having panic attacks. And I had just kind of resolved myself to that fact that maybe that was the way it was going to be. And it was wisest for me to stay away. And it was just difficult for me to go back to that place. But yesterday, there was an event there that I thought I should go to. And I spent many sleepless nights trying to decide, should I go, should I not, should I go or should I not? It brought back a lot of memories that were hard. And the thing I realized is I was afraid to go because I was afraid of the panic attacks that were going to happen, that I thought probably would happen. And finally I thought, no, you know what? Panic attacks are not going to kill me. And so if I do have panic attacks, it's not the end of the world. I think I should go. And so my husband was cheering me on. You can do this. You can do this. And I had a friend who was a couple good friends that knew my struggles, who said, you know, we're thinking of you and praying for you. And so we headed on over to the place that I was afraid to go back to. And, you know, I had been back there a couple times before. And when I did go back, I had panic attacks constantly. And I was beyond excited at the end of yesterday as we drove back home to realize I did not have one panic attack while we were there. That's a very big part of my journey. And I thought of my little granddaughter and how after she accomplished something, she said, I did it. I did it. My husband and I have been saying that lots around the house lately since I've seen that, because, you know, so often in life we have goals for ourselves or we're working on something and we accomplish it, but we don't even stop to acknowledge or celebrate that. We just, oh, I met that goal, and you move on to the next thing. But I realized it's important to stop for a minute, take a breath, and acknowledge that some things are a big deal. And it's worth celebrating. And I don't know if my story can be an encouragement to any of you who might be going through a season of panic. Sometimes it's hard to take that first step and to go into something that you think might cause you panic. But you might surprise yourself and realize that you've exercised enough muscles that you can do it. And I think it's neat how there are pieces of the puzzle of your story that fit together at just the right time. So right before we left to go over to the place that I just thought I would spend my time panicking in, it was a Sunday morning. We were at church, and the sermon that morning was on your identity. Where is your identity? Where does your identity come from? And as I sat there listening to that message, I thought, wow, the timing of this is absolutely perfect. I think this message is just for me. And, you know, so often we listen to those voices that we think we hear. We think we're hearing people saying things like, you're not good enough, you're not welcome, you're not wanted. And so we build our identity on what we are hearing from people around us who we are desperately maybe trying to please, and they cannot be pleased. But what the message was about that morning was that that's not where our identity comes from. The person who tells us who we are is Jesus. And he tells us we're precious. And that if we are following him, we are his child. Like, I am a daughter of the King. And I am learning, it's a constant a learning curve for someone like me who wants to please people. I don't want to let anybody down. I want what people say about me behind my back to be good. Some of you know and you feel the same way. But the truth is, we can't control what other people think about us. We can't. And we can't, there are some people that we just cannot please. But what matters is what Jesus thinks about us. And just knowing that no matter what, he's with us and he loves us. End of story. So I just wanted to share that with you as an encouragement and a challenge to not forget to celebrate the wins in life and acknowledge where you've grown and keep exercising those muscles that step by step take you somewhere. Remembering that your Heavenly Father is with you every step of the way, and he will catch you if or when you fall. I hope that's an encouragement to you today, and until next time, toodaloo.